This is Artist on Art and KZSC.org. It's kind of a Duplo thing because Phoenix Toews, who's one of our guests today, has really is a cross-disciplinarian, and you can be actually titled a whole bunch of different things, whether it's a computer programmer, artist, and so you could go on both, because there is a game element to augmented reality.
Absolutely. I mean, it's all, game technology is core to everything. I mean, I use OpenGL, for instance, just for the graphics, and that's much of what that is comes out of game technology.
So I wanted to just get back to a little bit the program that you developed. How did you go about developing it? What are you using different kinds of program language to?
Yeah, it's written, and I think I always have to think about this because there's times when I constructed stuff using other languages, but for the most part, I think it's constructed in 4 different languages. Really C and C++, but there are times when I'm using fairly specific C or fairly specific C++ idioms, and Objective-C and Lua. Lua is a scripting language that is used to embed in other programs. So it's a scripting language that lets you expose some of the core elements of a program. It's used in a lot of different places you wouldn't expect. The World of Warcraft, for instance, has a scripting language that allows you to manipulate characters or things in the world, and it's based on Lua as well. So it's really a small, fast scripting language that you can extend and make it more dynamic by programming at a lower level.
So Phoenix, did you study computer science?
Yes and no. I taught myself to program when I was 10.
With BASIC or what?
I learned, what did I learn first? I learned BASIC on the TRS-80 Model 3 was the original language that I learned in it, and I then moved to...
Was your dad a programmer, your mom? Like, did you just have nobody, that you just had this obsession?
I loved arcades. I mean, I passionately loved arcades. I spent pretty much all of my allowances growing up in the arcades.
With the quarters.
Yeah, quarters. We you go
or
to
you
arcades
get the tokens,
where you get tokens.
Right.
Sometimes it was like 5 tokens for $1, so you get 1 extra for it. But there was actually one place that had 8 tokens for $1, but they had always had the older games. You know?
So you had to go old school.
Yeah.
This is up in Arcata, where you grew up?
Yeah, the 8 tokens for $1. That was Tiffany's. I don't know if they're still around. They were one of the longest running up that area. They lasted longer than anybody else. But so yeah, I was fascinated by it. How do you do that? I was always asked that question. How do you do this? You know, it felt like magic to me, and I was fascinated by it. So my school had three or four TRS-80 computers that they used for first teaching aids, and if you were persistent enough, you could get permission to use them like after school. And I would stay after school and bug my parents for rides up. They never really cared for that, but it'd be like, where's Phoenix? I gotta go pick him up. He stayed at school to program, but that's what I did. Then eventually my parents bought a computer. We had a Commodore 64.
I remember those.
Yeah, I learned with that, the Commodore 64, was that there will be published limitations. You know, there'll be things that they say the computer can only do this, and then if you look closely, you realize it can do a hell of a lot more, and that you can't be restricted to those limitations. That there is, in a very real way, when it comes to the technology we have in the world today, we've only hit the. If we were to even just freeze technology today, we've only hit the very smallest bit of what these things are capable of. And yet we keep pushing the technology further too, so it's a moving target.
That's happening faster and faster.
And it's happening faster and faster, but you know, just freeze technology right now and we could spend the next century figuring out what the hell these things can do.
Phoenix Toews, you are listening to Artist on Art / Gamers on Game. Which way are we doing it right now? Right now we're talking more game. But I hear the artist coming out in you, because this, like, you know, realizing that you don't have to be held back by these limitations. That's when I start seeing the artist in you, which is very real. Phoenix, you consider yourself an artist.
I consider myself an artist first, and I'm very much. I mean, I'm an expert programmer as well, and but I think these go hand in hand. I think art is about how you look at what you do, and if you take something that you do, anything, it doesn't matter. You could be cooking, for instance, can be an art form, or it can be just something you do to feed yourself. It really depends on how you want to approach it. When I approach programming, I approach it as a way of really interfacing directly with my brain. Like, how can I'll think of something off the wall, like, I love Kurt Vonnegut, and Slaughterhouse-Five, I think, is an amazing story, and there was a concept he plays with in there with the becoming unstuck in time, among other things. But he also has these aliens called the Tralfamadorians, who say that they see all of time as one thing. And I was thinking about that, and what would that look like? Could we replicate that somehow?
With my Google glasses?
Yeah, well, I mean, as it happens, there is a way to visualize it, and I thought I'd come up with it independently. Of course, other people had thought of it before too.
Arg.
Called time cubes, and in fact, you can take a video. In fact, actually, it's really an approximation, but you can take a video, and rather than thinking of the space between frames as time, you can think of them as a spatial dimension. So you can build up all the pixels of the video and place them into a gigantic cube, which you then can manipulate the time, how you look at that, and how time is mapped. So if you
you slice it.
How you slice it, exactly. So you can think of, a video normally you play it forward, you can play it backwards, and we're very familiar with that. But you can also play it sideways.
How do you play it sideways?
Well, if you think of time as being, if you think of it as a stack of paper, the front piece of paper is your front frame, back piece of paper is your back frame.
Right.
And then if you're playing the video, you're pulling off sheets of paper. Well, what if you took that stack of paper and turned it sideways, so you're looking at it like you're looking at a book on a shelf?
Right.
And then you start slicing that direction.
So then you get a bit of all of it.
You see time across the horizontal dimension. And that becomes a...
Isn't that great? What do you say, Evita?
I think that's amazing.
Being a videographer, that must be really exciting to think about that.
Very exciting. I've never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
I have a question. As far as holographic images in relation to time, how would you compare that?
I haven't really thought about that much. That'd be something to think about. I don't know much. I personally don't know much about how holographs work. I know a little bit. There's laser. It's a laser technology.
The thing that I see, Phoenix, also like stimulating for me is streaming, which is something that you do. And so if you could take a slice of all the streamers that are happening at one time around the world,
right, you
would be able to get a slice of what is happening with that timestamp, that atomic clock.
Absolutely. There's a piece, I consider it a masterpiece. There's a piece, I forget the artist right now. It's called Listening Posts. And it's part of the permanent collection at the San Jose Museum of Contemporary Art. And it's all these little displays, hundreds of them, all arranged in a grid.
Video displays?
They're old LCD displays, like little, they just display text.
Little text displayers.
Little text displayers. And what the program does is it's constantly scavenging phrases from chat rooms around the world, and it looks for certain patterns in those chat rooms, and then builds a display that tries to get at the sense of what are people thinking about now. And
it's so gestalt.
And then it has an electronic voice that kind of reads some of it, But it's the same kind of idea. It's like what's this sort of a snapshot of that. It's not video, which we can do video too.
No, it's a text. It's textual, but it's a communication. It's telling us something.
Right.
Yeah. Now, gestalt would be something.
Gestalt would be absolutely correct.
So the idea that you have something greater than all the little pieces.
Right.
And so this listening post is taking all these little pieces and figuring what the greater speak is.
Correct. And this is where things, the crossover between a programmer and an artist becomes really powerful. So we have the ability to look at how can I take the symbols of the world and remix them in some way that we never could do before.
And communicates a whole new idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, this is so exciting, Phoenix. And so you have an interesting little story. Some could say that you are the longest running Danum student.
Yeah.
Because you took one of the first classes that Danum offered.
The first class that Danum offered.
What was that class, Phoenix?
That was Introduction to Electronics. It's the one they require for all the Danum students when they first come in.
And that's where you get to play with the Arduino and make your little mechatronic, robotic, sensing, devicing interactivity.
Yep.
Which is a big part of digital arts, new media. Anyways, he has a new company called Augmented Mountain. And you can see Phoenix's work with his two partners at augmentedmountain.com.
Correct.
And Evita, your work is at Evita Huapaya.com. And I'm going to spell that for our dear audience. That's EVITAHUAPAYA.com. And there you'll be able to see Evita's movies and the different projects that she's doing. And then Phoenix's augmentedmountain.com, you can see your business and what you are offering. And you just started this company after having graduated from Danum. So I have to do the full disclosure. Phoenix is a recent Danumite graduate student that is of the Digital Arts and New Media program here on campus, which is a Master's in Fine Arts and Arts. And so one of the people that you're doing this new company with, augmentedmounted.com, is with Meredith Drum, who is also a recent graduate, along with Phoenix, and then I forget your...
Mitch Miller.
Mitch Miller is the third partner. And what does Mitch do?
Mitch is an artist. Primarily sculptor, and he does a lot of art that deals with concepts of construction and deconstruction. A lot performative too. So he does these pieces where he makes these sculptures and then brings them into the gallery and invites people to shoot them with arrows.
Ah, that's great. And it's so a part of what augmentedmountain.com does.
Yes, I mean if we look at we have a program that's out right now called Pyrite, and we could get into more about that later. But the program as it stands, you take it, you point your phone, it's for the iPhone and the iPad, point it at something like an art piece or anything you want, really. Put your finger on it, you pull back, and it shoots a dart and shatters the screen into pieces.
Just like Mitch's real sculpture performance piece.
And those pieces get scattered all around you in the virtual world. In the augmented reality part of it, and you can take those pieces and build your own sculpture, and then leave it at wherever location you made it at. And even though you can't see it in the real world, you can look through your phone
and see it
and come back and look at it later. It will stay in the location you put it.
and then you can tell me about it. So let's say we were doing this at the Red,
Right.
and you made a sculpture for me, and now I have Pyrite on my iPhone, and I go back to the Red.
Well, that for various reasons that capability has not yet been enabled to actually show it to you on your separate device. Right now, anything you create is only on your own device.
I see.
The networking.
But I see that
component
happening.
The networking component is part of part of our upgrade.
Plans, of course.
Yeah. So it's not in there yet. Partly it's the networking component is a rather complicated beast.
Woohoo! Like Wi-Fi, G3, what are you going to do?
Storage, too.
Storage.
Where are you going to store it and how are you going to store it and make sure that everyone has access to it, plus sorting. It gets complicated.
Yeah, and then, so you would have to have your own server. I would assume Augmented Mountain would have to...
We'd have to have our own server, or maybe multiple.
That would
Yeah.
store all of these sculptures that people are making.
Correct.
Have you shown Pyrite other than to people such as myself that are like, show me what you're doing, Phoenix? Have you just came from Miami? Is what I'm trying
Right.
to.
Yes. Yeah. We went to Miami to the Scope Festival, which was a partner with us on this project for that period of time, and we placed. We did a couple things. We did some special things for the Scope Festival specifically. When you approach the entrance to the festival itself, which is in this big gigantic tent, that's kind of important actually because GPS doesn't work in buildings very well because these act as shields. But in a tent, it works fine. When you approach the entrance to the tent, you would hear some clapping and like a drum roll and some horns go off and
Through your iPhone.
Through your iPhone. If you have headphones in, it would be localized, so you can actually hear it from where it's coming from, so it helps you find what's going on. And then you see these 3 hot air balloons that aren't there physically, but are there virtually, launch off into space. And they each have a different logo. One of them's a logo for our app called Pyrite. One was the Scope logo, and one was our company logo, Augmented Mountain logo.
So Pyrite, Pyrite, as
Correct.
in the Fool's Gold medal.
Correct.
And then Scope. Just give us a second about Scope. It's pretty cool.
There's some really good art there.
And it's mostly young, like the hipsters artists, right?
It was pretty mixed, but yeah, there's quite a bit of that. There's definitely, but there was. It's contemporary art, up and coming artists that if you haven't seen them yet, most likely you will eventually. That collectors are beginning to be really interested in.
Mm-hmm.
There are several festivals that happen at the same time in Miami, and they all have different kind of focuses. Foci, I suppose, would be the more correct term, but yeah. But so everything from Art Basel, which is considered the big festival that is all art from well-known artists, and down to you have like Red Dot and Art Miami, and they all have slightly different ways that they present themselves. And Scope is really presenting themselves as new up-and-coming artists. A little bit risky, but not completely risky. It's not.
Okay, so I got my Pyrite app. I got my
Yes.
iPhone. I'm approaching this tent. I'm seeing these things happen. They're not there. This is the augmented reality portion of it, right?
Correct.
So, if you wouldn't mind just giving us a really quick definition of augmented reality for the dear audience that doesn't quite understand those two words together. And we have talked about changing augmented reality to something that's more precise, but go ahead and give us your spiel.
Yeah, so there are 2 major forms of augmented reality right now. One of them is the form that I do, which in technological or in the technology terms they call it sensor-based. I don't like that term because it's not entirely accurate, because all forms of augmented reality are also sensor-based. but it's more accurately, I call it place-based technology. It uses GPS, the global positioning satellites, to locate your position in space, and by knowing that, you can place virtual content relative to your position. So it looks like that content is embedded in the world as if it was really there.
So you're looking at the world through your iPhone.
Correct.
And this is the embedding is happening on my little screen is where I'm seeing this happen.
Right. So it's as if you were pulling up your... In terms of the display, it looks like you are looking at your camera, the view from your camera.
Right.
But instead of seeing just the view from your camera, you also see things that we've created to place into the space.
Such as these sculptural forms.
Right.
With pyrite.
Right, with pyrite. And
the shattering effect is very dazzling. It's interesting.
Yeah. That's the thing, is it takes the screen and makes it into the thing that you're playing with, and those pieces fly out around you as shattered into pieces that you don't control how it shatters, but then you can take those pieces and form your own sculpture that is the scene that you just saw, and then leave it there. And then be able to come back and find it. Correct.
With your phone.
With your phone.
So soon there will be the network. The social kind of aspect. Will you be able to share your sculptures with other people?
Yes.
That
Correct.
come there.
Yeah.
Augmentedmountain.com. You've done another project with Meredith and Mitch, I'm not sure, but with Meredith, where you're using this augmented reality, blended reality, however, infused reality was something that Pat Riley came up with the last time we talked. Reality with that hint of flavor. And you use this in a historical context.
That is correct. So we're actually still constructing this piece. It was meant to be already done, but for various reasons things got delayed. But
well, you just graduated.
Yeah.
Just a few months ago.
Right. So we're working on a piece called Oyster City, and it takes place in Lower Manhattan, all over Lower Manhattan. Actually, it's quite a large area. It's part history tour, part scavenger hunt, part game. That tells a story of the origins of the city through the viewpoint of the oyster beds of New York, and it's an interesting thing when I talk about the oyster beds of New York. I'd say that the vast majority of people have oyster beds in New York. Like these don't go together. There are no oysters in New York. Well, not in any abundance by any means at this point. But if we were to go to the history of it, at one point when the first European settlers came to New York, the oyster beds in New York were the largest in the world. And
so this is what, 1600, 1700?
16th century.
Yeah.
And so they were initially a food that lower class poor people ate because they were so abundant that you couldn't even sell them. You just walk out and grab them off the shore. They know that the water was very, very clean at the time because there were so many oysters that they were cleaning the water cleaning all the water in the entire estuary several times a day.
My gosh.
If you go there now, you see the water is really not clean.
Yeah.
But after many, many years of them dumping trash in there,
the Industrial Revolution. Yeah,
overfishing, putting pollutants in the water. Eventually the oyster beds were destroyed. You can